has been growing so much that I can now speak on little sections of the world. And today I'm going to talk about the European African colonies. And I have to thank my co-conspirators, Philip Desleep from the UC Santa Barbara and Larry Harnish, features writer for the Times, and the members of the IAPSOP, the International Association for the Preservation of Spiritualist and Occult Periodicals, who maintain a wonderful website that I'm very happy to be a part of. We've also reached the point here that I have to issue a warning. This lecture may be dangerous to your health. The transmission of residual Segno success waves via Zoom has not been studied to date, and I heartily recommend the use of protective equipment. And just to give.
So Ed, I'm following your advice. I have everything I need right here.
I ask everybody to look at the picture of Loic, and I'd like to show my lecture at the Akron Collectors Club a few years ago, and you can see they, including our president, who's right in the center of the picture, all came prepared with protective equipment. So they suffered no wrongdoings due to any residual success waves. So with that caveat, let's proceed with the lecture. Professor Segno was a self-proclaimed mentalist who, for the sum of $1 per month or 10 per year, would send his good vibrations, so-called success waves, in your direction twice a day, and your life would improve in numerous areas. He operated out of LA from 1900, and to unite his subscribers, he formed the Segno Success Club, membership in which was part of his subscription fee. He also claimed to be the creator of the new science of mentalism and formed the related organization, the American Institute of Mentalism. And here's the professor. Here he is sending his success wave, and you can see people's lives improving in all those categories.
It's about that hair, though.
And then there's a picture from 1905 and 1920. And yes, the key part of all three pictures is that pompadour that he maintained, which was characteristic of his presence. How successful was he? Well, by 1903, the Success Club had 12,000 members, each paying monthly or yearly membership fees. Roughly, that's $120,000 per year, or $2.4 million in today's purchasing power. This is serious stuff. The postmaster in LA, in response to complaints about Segno's activities by the bishop, noted that Segno was doing nothing unusual relative to the activities of many others. And he was investigated by the PO in 2003, and no charges were filed. The issue was you could not trap a success wave and scientifically show it was nonsense. Segno, the postmaster also noted in this response, could people mute their microphones, please? Segno was the largest private mailer in LA, sending as many as 6,000 to 7,000 letters per day, and he received thousands of letters per day. With the proceeds from his activities, he built a mansion and publishing office, 1905 and 6, in the Echo Park section of LA. Speaking of baseball, this is right near Dodger Stadium. And in 1911, I found a report that indicates the Success Club had about 70,000 clients, and I've not confirmed that piece of data. This is from the IAPSOP, and we have a picture of the Segno investigation in July 1903. You can see Segno Success Club, A. Victor Segno, president, at the top. And the key line is the blue arrow where it says evidence insufficient for fraud order. He passed muster and they couldn't stop him. This really shows his success. This is an advertising duplex postcard. And at the top left, we have the American Institute of Mentalism, that big building up front. You could see the cupola at top. You could imagine Segno up there sending success waves around the world. And right at the top of that is a globe representing the world, of course. And if you go up the block a bit, the second building is the publishing company. If you go through the main doors, you come to the court and gardens, which he called Inspiration Point. If we go down to the business side of the duplex postcard, you see it's franked with a penny Franklin from the 1902 series. Interestingly, there's no month and day in the date stamp, and that's because this was a special rate for time-independent matter, which was held in the post office until there was space. The rate was a penny for 2 ounces, and it could proceed on. And finally, we have the advertising portion is ever so simple. If you seek success, write to the Segno Success Club. And fortunately, the post office struck a date stamp on arrival, and we see it arrived in July of 1908. How large were the operations? We see a dozen people in the mailroom, 3 big bags of mail ready to go, 3 mail bags being filled. We go to the secretarial room. We see a dozen people in the secretarial room, in addition to the dozen in the mail room. The postmaster of LA noted that Segno employed 50 typewriters. So my guess is the staff at the American Institute of Mentalism was between 30 and 50 people. So this was a pretty serious operation. Some of the publications by Professor Segno, you always had to have things to sell. And at the Segnogram Publishing Company, the key book, of course, was The Law of Mentalism. But he also published How to Live 100 Years and Retain Your Youth, Health, and Beauty. I'm ready for a copy of that one. Life in the Great Beyond, or The Law of Life and Death, The Secret of Memory, How to Possess a Perfect Head of Hair. He's certainly the guy for that. Into This World and Why, a somewhat philosophical book. And then a pamphlet, How to Be Happy Though Married. You could buy that for $1. I should note Professor Segno divorced his first wife in 1903. He married an employee named Annie Del Dinsmore, who helped run the American Institute of Mentalism. He ran off to Germany actually in 1912 with one of his secretaries and married his 3rd wife. So he wasn't particularly successful in this book. This is some of the ephemera that is now part of the collection. Languages were not a problem to any of these fraudsters. They published all of their advertising, all of their publications, all of their material to be purchased in all of the major European languages. And I have copies, of course, of The Law of Mentalism in English. German, you notice, printed by the Segno Success Club in Berlin. Spanish, Italian. You see from 1930 a private edition in Romanian. And finally, at the right, after Segno died in 1940, the French published a new edition of The Law of Mentalism in 1950 with some added material by one Paul Clément Jagot. So that's really, really quite impressive. Whoops. This is the favorite publication of Professor Segno. This is my copy, How to Be Happy Though Married. You can see copyright 1901. And this is Larry Harnish's copy, a little fancier with a nicer cover. You can see the price right up front. They also published a magazine for maybe 4 years that's available on the IAPSOP site. You could see the home of the Segnogram. If you go into the main reception hall, as you come in, you notice an office to the left. And if you look very, very carefully, you see someone seated at the desk. And I believe that's Professor Segno working hard on his scams. Silver Spoon creating and collecting was very popular in the early 1900s. And of course, the Segno organization responded accordingly. And here's my Segno silver spoon that someday I hope to exhibit in a philatelic frame, if possible. And you'll notice at the top handle, you see there's a key, and in that key is success. So, you know, Segno's wares are the key to success. Did the good vibrations work? Well, there are loads and loads of testimonials, probably some real and some created. Two I particularly like. You no doubt will be glad to learn that since joining your club, I have improved my health, supported myself and little baby girl, and made over $1,000 and risen from servant to be a proprietor. That's a lot of success. And from Kansas, I consider your success club the greatest discovery made by man. I have some personal opinions on this that I thought I would relate. You can take these for what they are or not worth. I personally estimate that membership in the Success Club appeared to be successful for about half the members of the club. There's a high probability that something good would happen in the lives of many members during their membership. Maybe a new job at higher pay, investment success, birth of a healthy child. Maybe they were cured of what they thought to be a significant health issue, which was not, or they had something minor that they thought was serious, or they did experience a real cure of a disease. I mean, sometimes, as with COVID recently, a lot of people just cure it with their own immune system. I note that similar success was experienced with homeopathic medicine at the time. And also, as a species, I think we're easily fooled. And as part of that, I cite the furor over hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, the furor that caused in our current pandemic, when in fact, neither compound shows any activity in double-blind placebo-controlled testing. The same is true with homeopathic medicine today, yet it's still available at CVS and Walgreens. So with that statement, let's move to the Philately and look at Segno's success in West Africa and then beyond. And at the top, you can see here, there he is sending the success wave in Spanish. No problems with foreign languages. It's important to note that many of the covers I have are from small, remote villages and not just the colonial capitals and large commercial centers. I was really worried when I started this that I was going to get a lot of mail from capitals and commercial centers, but that's turned out not to be the case. The mail is principally coming from the smaller, more remote areas. So let's start in West Africa. And I realized when I got this map from the web that, you know, this is the kind of map that used to hang in my grammar school classes. You know, we had maps of all the continents, or we could pull them down. And you'll note here, the French controlled territories are in gray. The British, of course, are always in pink. Other countries, Germany is orange. We've got green for Portugal, brown for Belgium. So everybody's represented, except you're struck by the fact that most of Africa was controlled by European powers. So, and where you see the happy faces, these are the colonies from which I have Segno-related material. So let's start off with Gambia. Here's a nice registered letter from Bathurst. We can establish the date. We can't read the date stamp clearly, but it's backstamped in San Francisco with a transit from April 1915. This is a pre-addressed envelope to Annie del Segno in 1915. She was, at this point, Segno's ex-wife, but running the American Institute of Mentalism. We'll have more to say about that in a bit. And this is a pre-addressed envelope that went out in an information package. I've been wondering for a long time why the French accepted the colony of Gambia. It's just a colony of a river valley, the Gambia River or the Senegambia River, that cuts right through Senegal and puts a big dent in getting around in Senegal. And I just got an answer to this question from Gary Lowe. He said it's all due to Bismarck. That the French and the British were negotiating a transfer of Gambia to the French in the 1870s, and Bismarck proceeded to invade France in the Franco-Prussian War, then won it. And after the Franco-Prussian War, the French and the British sort of lost track of the transfer of Gambia. So Gambia remained a British area. Here's one from actually the main town, Freetown, Sierra Leone, just a simple everyday 2.5 penny letter. But the key thing about it is it's to the Segno Publishing Company. You don't see a lot of mail to the publishing company. Somebody was writing directly for information on books. Here's another one from Freetown. This is a 1 penny postal stationery envelope brought to the proper 1.5 penny rate, also from Freetown. Speaking of the publishing company, here it is, close up and personal from the Segnogram magazine just after it was finished. If you look very carefully at the nameplate above the main entrance, you can see Segnogram and publishing. You can't see all of it, but they just started operation. The square footage of that building was actually pretty comparable to the square footage of the American Institute of Mentalism. It was a big publishing company. Here's a couple of pieces of the ephemera from the collection. This is my copy of Into This World and Why, a later publication of Segno, and then the pamphlet, The Secret of Memory, from the earlier days. And if you look at any of the publications, they always include something to buy. And within the Into This World and Why, you can see things that are being sold at the right. It's kind of interesting, a special offer on the book, Into This World and Why. Buy 10 copies for $15, specially bound in blue art leather, and you can give them out to your friends for a birthday, Easter, or Christmas gift. Always pushing the business. They also did contract publishing as part of Segno's activities. And here's a book on raising poultry in California by one Mrs. A. Baisley, and you can see it was published by the Segnogram Press. He also did the books for the Los Angeles school system. So he had all sorts of ways of making money legitimately. From Grand Bassam, Ivory Coast, we have a nice pair of pirogue stamps here at the 50 centime rate, 1923. This is not registered, so probably somebody was writing back to the American Institute of Mentalism for information, and this is one of the pre-printed envelopes that was in the outgoing information package. Maybe a little more interesting is another letter from Grand Bassam from 1923, registered. Now it's at the 1 franc rate, 50 centimes postage, 50 centimes registration at this time. And it's important to know that Professor Segno and his organization accepted all monetary vehicles, these currencies from all over the world, postal or bank money orders, even stamps were accepted as money, and you could deal with him. The other thing about these two letters is the pirogue stamps. It turns out the pirogue was a very, very important vehicle for the indigenous people of Africa, and that's why they're featured on these stamps. And I remember Bob Stone did an article in our Philatelist on the pirogue. It's history both from the point of view of philately and postal history, and also its history in terms of culture. So I just thought I'd show you some pirogues. This has got nothing to do with the American Institute of Mentalism. I just happen to have had this postcard in my collection from Cap Lopez, Gabon. And you can see the gathering of the pirogues. This was a major method of transportation, communication. They actually carried the mail amongst the small villages via these vehicles. So let's move on to the Gold Coast, Kumasi and Duduwa. Okay, two small villages again. People attempted to send printed matter at a halfpenny rate. And you can see the piece at the right from Kumasi from January 12, 1915 arrived without problem. But the piece at the lower left was sent at the halfpenny rate. It made it out of the British system. There were no issues, But when it got to New York, the Hudson Terminal, I think, there was some problem with this as printed matter. Possibly somebody had written a note on it when they examined it. So it was charged, it was boosted to the 2.5 penny rate. That's 4 pence due in British currency or 8 cents due in American currency. The other issue here is why was printed matter being sent to Professor Segno? My first thought is maybe it was some fraudster in the Gold Coast, but then I looked at the date, January 12th, 1915. Somebody was sending the professor holiday greetings. Yes, they were so happy with Success Club membership, they took the time to send holiday greetings to the professor. Here's a letter from another small village, Kita, in the Gold Coast at the 1 penny rate, but there was no 1 penny rate from the British colonies to the USA. Colonialists often assumed there was and franked accordingly. There were 1 penny rates from the British colonies to Great Britain and colonies, and from Great Britain to the US. There are loads of colonial letters from this period franked in error at 1 penny to the USA, and it allows you to study how underfranked mail was canceled. Well, it was handled. In this case, the Kita Post Office did not note the underfranking, and it's my general observation in all of my collecting, when the sending post office fails to recognize an underfranking, the letters quite frequently proceed to their final destination without postage due, except for Switzerland. Switzerland always seems to have caught it. This letter is addressed to the Life Culture Society that did the book Into This World and Why, and it's the only one that I have recorded to date, a piece of mail to them. Here we have proper treatment of an underfranked attempt at the printed matter rate. It originated in Cape Coast in 1916, and the post office there noted there was a problem with this item, so it was struck with a T. When it got to the Penn Terminal station in New York, it was marked due 8 cents, all correct. And when you turn it over, it has a wonderful censor date stamp from the Gold Coast. Again, censoring of mail is quite important in this area at this time, and it's marked ER. I assume those are the initials of the clerk who did the censoring on the item. Here's one at a 2 penny rate. Again, there was no 2 penny rate, but this wasn't caught by the post office, so it went through. And you see it's got some nice censor tape on this, another way of handling censorship. Here we have a double weight registered letter from the village of Dodowa again, showing use of the Accra censor hand stamp and the penny war tax stamp. We're now into 1919. So this is getting to be a nice piece of postal history, small village use, nice stamps, the war tax stamp, the censor hand stamp. And finally, just an everyday 2.5 penny rate. That's the standard overseas rate. And you can see the Accra hand stamp. And this one is also to the Segno Publishing Company. Turns out, of course, Germany had a couple of colonies in Africa too, and this is from Atak Pame, Togo in 1912. You can see it's a pre-typed return envelope to Professor Segno that went out in an information package to a small village in Togo. It's franked properly at the 10 pfennig rate, whereas we have 25 centimes, 2.5 pence for the French and British. The correct rate for the Germans is 20 pfennigs. So that's perfectly rational. If you know your history, the British and French occupied German Togoland in August 1914. As part of World War I, the British and French defeated the Germans in the Togoland campaign in August of 1914, and Togoland was occupied. This is a picture of I believe, of the British troops, and you can see there are 5 commanders, and the rest seem to be indigenous troops from the area who are being paid by the British to support their positions in West Africa. From Lome, Togo, we have a nice registered letter now employing the Anglo-French occupation stamps for Togoland, 4.5 penny rate. The censor tape signed by the censor. You notice the original addressee was someone named Hollingsworth, and he was blotted out, and the American Institute of Mentalism was typed in. So they were saving envelopes there that had fallen, where they had lost the need for the envelopes and reusing them, which is kind of interesting, and I'll have some comments on that in a moment. Here's one from the little village of Siwi in Togo from the British-French occupation. And it turns out the date stamp for this town was collapsing at this time. It was very, very heavily worn. The crown is just a blot near the top of the small circle, and you can see the Gold Coast lettering has all collapsed. I was just looking on the web at just this cancel on a stamp, and the dealers are asking $40 to $50 just for the cancel. And here's a very nice example on a letter to the American Institute of Mentalism. Of course, we have the French side too. We have a registered letter from an Echo Togo from the French-British occupation. And again, the 50 centime rate. You see this went through the British office at Accra for censorship, where it was passed. You also see some other names, Lawson and Vodome. The names of Hollingsworth, Lawson, and Vodome reflect newcomers to the American Institute of Mentalism, as Professor Segno faded into obscurity, and I'll tell you why in a couple of minutes. Here's one from Porto Novo de Home, 1906, with group type stamps, the 1900 issues making the proper 25 centime rate. Again, via the British in Lagos. And this is a new addition to the collection that I was very happy to acquire from Loic. And I'll have more to say about that in a little bit. Here's another one from Dahomey from Ouida. Very nice registered letter, 50 centime rate. All the elements you would want: a nice registry hand stamp, Paris Foreign Office registry arrival, and it's got transits from New York on the back and an arrival in Los Angeles. And it shows the native tree climber stamp, who I believe one of our members collects very wholeheartedly. Go over to Nigeria now. We have southern and northern Nigeria. Here's a proper 2.5 penny letter from southern Nigeria, interestingly addressed in Spanish. I have something to say about Spanish colonies in short order. And here's another one from a tiny village in southern Nigeria, Barutu, showing use of the 2.5p rate. And then there's northern Nigeria, and we have from Kano a registered letter at the 4.5 penny rate. Again, it's registered, it's got money in it. They were buying something, possibly membership, possibly books, all the way from this little village. And then one of the last recorded letters to the American Institute of Mentalism, this is from Lagos, Nigeria, 1936. And you can see it's a 3 penny Nigerian registry envelope that's been brought to the 6 penny rate. And take a look at the address. It's still addressed to Victor Segno. By 1936, he wasn't around at all, but his name was still associated with the organization. And it's to the numerology department. They even have another scam going at that time. Finally, over to the Cameroon, and favorite stamp of our president. This is the French occupation of the German Cameroon. And you see a nice Douala transit, the 30 centime stamp, which is 5 centimes overpaid. But I don't think this is philatelic. I've yet to see any philatelic material in this fraud collection. I was hoping to catch maybe a Zeppelin cover that traveled on the ship Los Angeles or something like that, but I haven't been able to find it. This one you wonder, gee, why did I put that in this collection? You see there's the Hollingsworth name blotted out again. That's not an important thing. It's from a nice part of the Cameroon Ebolona, registered with the French occupation stamps, and looks like this envelope has experienced some sort of serious event, maybe a good soaking along the way. We just don't know why. But it shows the Ebolona date stamp. But if you look at the registry label, they were using the German, still using the German Cameroon registry tag in 1917. Maybe the water has enabled us to read underneath, and you see register written underneath, and then something else, and I believe that something else is a manuscript AR. They probably didn't have a hand stamp for requesting a return receipt. So it was done in manuscript. And so you put the whole combination together. It's a cover worth buying. So I bit the bullet and bought it despite that condition. Finally, we come to the last, and this is the rarest cover in the West African section. It's from Santa Isabel Fernando Po. It's a double weight registered letter from this little tiny Spanish colony. Very, very nice, very good quality. And you look at the back, and first off, you see the 65 centimos that's double weight registered. And then on the back, it went through Madrid and the Spanish system en route to the destination in Los Angeles. And that's probably the best piece of postal stationery, pardon me, best piece of postal history that I have. So how did Segno do it? Okay, he was able to do good advertising at the local level. He had contacts in these colonies, in these countries, in the local areas. So he was able to control his advertising in newspapers and journals. And as this find by Philip Desleep shows us, he had support at the local level. This is a quote from the Gold Coast leader at Cape Coast, a small village, 1904. And it's a reprint of a paragraph from the Segnogram magazine of 1904. So the editor of and owner of the Gold Coast Leader was actually abstracting material from Segno and publishing it in his newspaper. And I think this has all led to, you always have to ask the question, where were these guys most successful? One of my fraudsters, the New York Institute of Science, were most successful in Hungary. I have more than 150 covers from Hungary. But where was Professor Segno most successful? There are more Segno covers from the Gold Coast than any other country. I've tallied about 35, many affronts, unfortunately, and many are damaged. But there's more material from the Gold Coast than France, Italy, Portugal, Spain, any other country you could come up with. So we've done West Africa, had some commentary. What about the rest of Africa? Well, here's a nice 2 millim printed matter envelope from Cairo, Egypt. Again, the question, why is Professor Segno getting printed matter? Look at the date, December 6, 1912. Again, holiday greetings to the professor. A normal 5 millim letter from 1907 from Alexandria. Notice it's to Annie Del Dinsmore, his wife at that time, and she's listed as secretary of the American Institute of Mentalism. She became treasurer, and then she ran it as time went on. We come to Algeria, and unfortunately, I just have 2 letters, one from Oran, one from Alger, and both of them are kind of tacky, and that's the best I could do. And I'm hoping this talk will incentivize our president to help find me some material from Algeria that might be a little more interesting and a little better shape. Here's a nice piece from Safi, Spanish Morocco, a registered letter employing a good Safi stamp. showing transits through Tangier and Madrid in the Spanish system. That's a much classier piece of postal history to have. But we swing around to the other side of Africa, and this is from Terra Zambezia in 1918. This is a really remarkable piece. I always think of, I had a friend, Charlie Fitz, who collected philately and murder. He was a minister who collected philately and murder. And he always talked about elements in a philatelic item. And this one is just loaded with elements. We've got 250 rice stamps from Zambezia that are properly used. That's equivalent to 10 centavos. A 2.5 centavo stamp from Lorenzo Marx. That also is proper usage from this area. It's registered. You see the nice registry label noting Mozambique. And of course, the South African censorship tape. Then you turn it over and there's a 1 penny Mozambique war tax stamp on the back, making a total rate of 13.5 centavos, pardon me, not pennies. So that's quite a remarkable and valuable piece. There's a very simple one from Rhodesia, Penhalunga, again, a little village. By the way, Teta was a mining community deep in Zambezia. Penhalunga was another mining community, and this is the earliest recorded Segno cover in my collection. And that's an important item, and I'll have more to say about it in just a little bit. And I like to include pictures of what these places look like to give you a sense of what it's like getting material from them. And this is the first hotel in Penhalunga. I found this on the web, and you can see Penhalunga is not a very classy place, and you don't expect a lot of mail from it. We now finally get to the South African areas, and here's one from Natal, but not Durban, but again, a smaller village, 2.5 penny rate. A beautiful cover from Premier Mine, Transvaal, censorship, great censorship markings, nicely marked on the back. It's overall a premier cover, and I'm very happy to have it in the collection. From the Orange River colony, Krugersdorp, showing the Dutch origins in this area, registered also to Professor Segno. And finally, something from a big town from Pretoria, Orange River and Transvaal stamps used again at the same registered rate, 6.5p. From this area. So where do we finish? Well, I'm going to finish in Madagascar. Is that part of Africa? Well, I'm considering it part of Africa. It was 55 million years ago, and certainly Africa has a lot of influence on Madagascar. Here's a very basic everyday letter from Tananarive, the capital of Madagascar, 25 centime group type stamp, typed envelope. The nice little aspect about it is it has the Grand Comore stamp. And if you know your Madagascar postal history, in 1911, Madagascar and dependencies came to include not only Nosy Bay, Diego Suarez, St. Marie de Madagascar, which were associated with Madagascar early, but also the 4 Comoro Islands, Anjouan, Bayat, Mohili, and Grand Comore. And the stamps were used interchangeably. So we have a Grand Comoro stamp used from Tananarive. A little more interesting with a Tananarive 2, this is another office in Tananarive, letter to Professor Segno. We have 5 4 centime group type stamps and 5 1 centime native bearer stamps. The last one is on the back of the cover. I'm not showing it to you. Addressed to Professor Segno. We can also capture small villages in Madagascar. Here's a letter from Fenerive, Madagascar, to the Chirological College. It's franked with 5 Mayat 1912 overprints. And what's the Chirological College? I've been talking for, 45 minutes, and I haven't mentioned the Chirological College. The Chirological College, you can see it's at Inspiration Point, Echo Park. It's got to be a Segno organization. This was Segno's first fraud entity, created in 1900. It is for palm reading and fortune telling. And he actually did it and taught it while he was developing the American Institute of Mentalism scam. This entity never made a lot of money, but they never let it go out of business. And I have 9 covers from various entities to the Chirological College. And we have one from a genuine small office, nicely franked with the native bearer stamps and a Grand Comore group type stamp for the 25 centime rate. I wish I knew somebody who collected the native bearer stamps. I really like these. And when you get a close up at this stamp, you will see there's this device for carting people around, and the person being carted around is, of course, the postman. You can see him here, and probably his bag hanging off of the vehicle. And there's one bearer up front with the vehicle on his shoulders, and one in back, and 2 support staff, one in back, one in front. 4 guys to carry the postman around. You can see the hilly terrain of Tananarive, and in the back you can see the capital. So as I said, I wish somebody collected this stamp. And finally, we get an aspect of Madagascar postal history that's quite interesting, the Madagascar numeral cancellation era. In 1899, the formation of new post offices in Madagascar was happening so fast that the system could not keep up with the date stamps. So they prepared numeral date stamps where you have the number in Madagascar, 2 styles with the number at top, Madagascar bottom, and then the Madagascar top number on the bottom, from 1 to 99. And these were presented to the newly developed post offices as they opened to be used on a provisional basis until the proper date stamp arrived from France. And often this took from between 3 to 12 months. This procedure continued from 1899 to 1939, okay, 40 years. And it's a nice subsidiary area in Madagascar postal history to try and associate numbers with post offices. And this letter does it very nicely. You see, it's the number 84 cancellation, and we have the return address, and the area is Faravohitra. It's a suburb of Tananarive, and this is from the newly opened post office. So that's, again, a nice piece of Madagascan postal history. This is my slide on the history of the American Institute of Mentalism. What I did, influenced by my friend Richard Maisel, who's sadly now deceased, who was a statistics teacher at NYU. I've made a graph plotting the number of covers versus year for the era of the American Institute of Mentalism and Professor Segno, and try to see how I could correlate that with the history of the institution. And I have comments good and bad. We see in 1905, they begin to sell mail to the philatelic trade, and the number of covers goes up. And this is when Segno builds his Echo Park complex. 1906 to 8, we're seeing the success of the Segno Success Club. 1909-10, something drastic happens. What's going on here? Well, the Segno marriage is failing, his marriage to Annie del Segno. 1911, the Segnos divorce, and Annie del Segno begins to run the American Institute of Mentalism as treasurer, and you see things start coming back. In 1912, Segno marries another secretary and moves to Berlin to start the Success Club there. Annie del Segno now takes over, and of course, we come into the high period of the American Institute of Mentalism. Segno returned in 1915 to LA as a total failure. In fact, the LA Times published an article, Mars Destroys Success Waves, meaning that World War II forced him out of Germany. There was very little interest in a success club run by an American in Germany in 1915. And we hear very little of Segno in 1915 and after. Annie del Segno was running the American Institute of Mentalism. And you see again a collapse, 1920-21. There's hardly any material. What's going on? Well, we know from web searches that Annie del Segno is being sued by her lawyer for failure to pay for the 1911 divorce, i.e. the American Institute of Mentalism is having monetary problems. We see some resurrection of mail in the early 20s, and then it just sort of peters out, poops out. And my last cover is from Nicaragua in 1937. So that's the basic history of the American Institute of Mentalism. What happened to the buildings in Los Angeles? Sadly, they were demolished in the 1970s to make way for the Lago Vista condominiums. And I've often thought, wouldn't Professor Segno's properties have been a wonderful home for the Museum of the City of Los Angeles? Wouldn't it be fun to have California art from 1900 to 1950 displayed in these buildings with the spookiness of the American Institute of Mentalism? Or they could have made a grand home for the LA Collectors Club if they could have found a benefactor. But alas, the buildings were destroyed. How do we know we're in the right place? I ask you to look at the postcard on the left, look at the palm trees running up the block, and look at the one on the right from 2012. Those are the same palm trees over 100 years later. And that's what happens to the palm trees. In 2012, I met with Philip and Larry at Sescal in Los Angeles. And we had a day of the meeting of the Success Club class of 2012. We had lunch at a restaurant near LAX that featured mock-ups of famous planes from around the world. And so we had someone take our picture under, of course, the Spitfire, which is one of the most famous planes, certainly of the 20th century. And by the time the picture reached me, of course, guess who our pilot was? So getting to the end here, I have to do a little commercial. Uncle Ed needs your help. I'm searching for philatelic material from postal history 1900 to 1935. I cannot search everybody's cover box, everybody's website, everybody's auction. I need help, and I'm asking for your help. I would ask everyone who's collecting material from this period to push their print screen button. That will copy all of these addresses that I collect. And after my talk, you can paste it into Word and expand it any way you want, and you'll have a copy of all those addresses. And if you are successful in helping me find material for my collection, you will become a member of my Slide of Fame. And these are the people that have helped me get material for this whole collection. And you see some noted philatelists, Mark Banchek, Gary Lowe, former editor of the AP, Robert G. Stone. I bought material that turned out to be fraud from material from him, even though we didn't know it. Dick Stevens, Kathy Johnson, Alain Millet of Paris. Notice Ben Bump is there. He's was the most recent edition. Ben found a wonderful letter from St. Lucia to Professor Segno, which is now in my collection. And today, I'd like all of you to join me in welcoming the latest member of the Slide of Fame, and that's, of course, Loic. Thank you very much, Loic, for the homemade cover. I'm putting his association at Colfra to maybe interest some of the people in Colfra.
My heart goes out to you.
Oh, here's Loic. Oh, he's all protected. He's all protected.
Yes, of course.
he's still successful there. So anyway, I hope some of you can find some material. Now, this would normally be the end of my lecture, but I have 3 more slides to show. Yesterday, I celebrated, and you notice the question mark, my 82nd birthday, okay? It's an event that makes one wonder, what have I done in life that's special? What have I done in life that's unusual? What have I done in life that few have done? What have I done in life that was truly exciting? what I have done in life that I will never forget. And the thing I remember is our 1974 vacation, where we took a Pan Am package and spent a week in London and a week in Paris. We flew to London on Pan Am flight 007, yes, 007, for those of you who like James Bond, to London, and we spent a week in London. After a delightful week in London, we boarded a British Trident, like a 727, only it's a British plane with 3 Rolls-Royce engines. And this did the supposedly 1-hour flight from London to Paris-Orly, Orly Airport in Paris. And in the morning, we finally landed at Orly, and we have pictures of our landing. And I just thought I'd share as something unusual in life, pictures of our landing at Orly Airport. You see, there was a little malfunction with the plane. Fortunately, my wife and I were up front. We came out early. You notice it's just a short drop to the ground. The French fire department was there, of course. You see the fire department at the wing helping people with the wing exit. And right at the left off of center there, you see a young guy with his hands in his pockets and a lot of hair. That's me in 1974. And you see a young lady next to me in a plaid outfit with white boots, looking like she's an extra from the British movie Georgie Girl. That's my wife, Lenore. I had almost reached the point of needing a change of underwear, but my wife thought it was great, a great bit of fun to come in like this. We were going over to a bunch of buses that took us to a bar, and for the next 2.5 hours, we had drinks and snacks courtesy of British European Airways. And our captain came over to meet and talk to everybody. His name was Brian Henderson. And strangely, he was a veteran of the Battle of Britain. He flew a Spitfire in the Battle of Britain, but never crashed when he brought his plane back. This was his first crash landing. And he actually took his regular flight back that afternoon. We found out from the French newspapers, but of course he had to leave his plane. So the moral of this story is, if you're ever going to be in trouble, hope you have somebody who's got great experience handling trouble, who's at the control of things. That's the end of my talk. I'll be happy to take any comments or questions or anything else that you might have. Ken, I'm returning control of the system to you.
Well, thank you. There. Now we've got everybody back.
Has Loic still got his hat on?
I removed it, but I'm happy to put it back if you feel it's needed. That's really not a problem.
Oh, there it goes.
It helps me get a little bit, definitely smarter. Now, one quick comment, because for safer travel, I suggest that you use this again. You talked about that Madagascar stamp with the transport in the Philatelic. I think that's the name of Philatelic. That's the name of that.
Yeah.
And this is a postcard that was made by some Belgium company.
Yes.
You might have seen it, and it has one of the group stamps, badly reproduced on the side. We don't really see that here. Yeah, kind of. But so it's the same thing. This little postman, French postman, all dressed in white, and with the four bearers of that. Of that weird system to carry the postman.
It's showing a little different version of the system, in that the 4 bearers are at each end of the rods. Yes. The one I show is bent in a funny way, and so it can rest on their shoulders.
Yeah, but that was a very typical way of transportation in Madagascar for sure at the time.
Yep.
And in Africa, I have seen also postcards in Africa where you have effectively the same way of transport. Totally politically incorrect today, but way common at the time.
Any comments on the postal history? Did I mess up anything? One of the problems, when you collect the French area, only the French area, you can get reasonably knowledgeable, but when you're collecting the world, it's really treacherous. And you run into a lot of things you don't quite understand, and you hunt for information from people. So you know, when I'm exposed to a larger audience, I hope to learn some things and correct mistakes I've made. We just had a COLFRA meeting yesterday, and I saw Alain here, and Loic is here. At the COLFRA meeting, one of the Madagascar covers shown was a total forgery, and nobody knew about it except me. And so I'm going to do a little correction on that one, I hope, at the next COLFRA meeting. And Loic's going to help me with the translations. So
Happy to.
Remember, if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, you are probably muted and need to unmute first.
Yeah, would you know, I mean, besides, let's say, running, you know, kind of on order prints for the school system in Los Angeles and things like that, did Segno as well, you know, resell, you know, used stamps, given you receive so much mail?
There are ads in the Segnogram magazine. You could buy a packet of stamps, of 25 stamps worldwide for 10 cents. And the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. And that's in the early part, 1903, 4, 5. And then I think in 05, they started selling covers to the philatelic trade. They and the New York Institute of Science recognized that they could, you know, put packages of 100 or 500 covers and sell it for maybe $2 or $3, and people would buy it. And that's why I have those covers to collect.
Yeah, that explains why we can still find them today. Mm-hmm.
Also Segno, if you look at the Segnogram magazine, he sold olive oil, he sold dried fruits, silver spoons, of course, I covered that. You know, anything where they could make some money, and he was into that. Even his wife, Annie Del Segno, sold a recipe book of healthful recipes. They were into good health too at the time. So,
do you collect Scientology covers? It seems like an extension.
I have to put a border around it, and the border is I'm collecting material from beginning 1900. It has to be American fraudsters. They have to have been investigated by the post office. There's got to be a good record of their success in terms of the postal history left behind. So I've put a box around that so I don't have to chase after every fraud scheme. I have a book by the American Medical Association in conjunction with the post office. It's about 3 inches thick, and it was published in 1920, and it lists all of the fraud organizations that were in operation in the United States from 1900 to 1920. And I would say not only hundreds, but maybe a couple thousand of them. I mean, fraud was just rampant, all sorts of ways. And I've found 4, and I collect those 4. Professor Segno was the first, simply because in 1989, I bought 2 covers from Saint-Pierre Miquelon from Guy Dillaway at Bolpex, and they were addressed to this guy, Professor Segno. And I began to wonder, who's Professor Segno? And, you know, it took a while to find out. I found out from Larry Harnish of the LA Times, and one thing led to another. And, you know, now the group type sold and I collect fraud. So big change.
I don't know if the De Laurence Company of Chicago would be considered on the same list of fraudsters. Certainly that's in a more modern era, but you certainly see many De Laurence covers where they allegedly were selling voodoo trinkets and beads and things to primarily African countries. And there's certainly a number of these covers to the former French colonies.
I don't know if you know Dan Piazza. Dan specializes in this in De Laurence, and he actually has a special De Laurence cape and hat mystical cape and hat that he wears. I could show you a picture of it, but I might mess up something here. But when he came to our Westfield Stamp Club and gave a lecture in this. And the thing with De Laurence is it's much more modern. It exists till recently.
Yes, yes.
I have a couple of De Laurence covers from my era, namely 1900 to 1910. Dan doesn't really fool around in that area, but I've got some nice items of postal history that I picked up. He doesn't seem interested in them, so I've kept them, but I don't want to start something there. I've got plenty on my plate, and I want to put more emphasis on maybe someday getting a couple of exhibits out of this and having fun with some of the judges, see what their reaction to all of this is. Getting my spoon into the exhibit, I'm really anxious to do that. I have put an oxypathor in a one-frame exhibit. That's a medical device that polarized your skin, oxygenated your blood, and cured all diseases. I do tape those to the top of a frame and ask the judges to take a test run on them if they want. But I'm still developing this. I see Ken's laughing there too.
Yes.
I have to hook. Well, I didn't hook you up at the Akron Collectors Club. We got your president. He was hooked up to the oxydonor in that. Oxydonor was a precursor to the oxypathor, but
Right.
It's just crazy. Unfortunately, I couldn't carry an oxypathor to the Akron talk. The airport police would get a little upset if somebody's carrying a pipe capped at each end with wires coming out of it and electrodes on the wires. I don't think they'd want to let you on a plane with one of those things. So I mailed a little oxydonor to Akron, and we in that picture the president was hooked up to it. He didn't have a shield on his head because he was hooked up to the oxydonor.
Yep.
Getting enough protection there, I'm sure. I do like to hook up local stamp club presidents to the oxydonor as part of my talk. So.
All right.
Well, thank you, Ed. It was wonderful. Thank
Yes. Yes, indeed. And I will now put in a commercial for the next two presentations. Bruce Downs, who is with us today, is going to speak on May 22nd, which is not the last Sunday, because the last Sunday falls on Memorial Day weekend. His topic will be French naval post. That's been circulated, I think, and it's in the journal this time with a description. So that's May, and then June 26th, we will have Mike Bass do his France and Holy Land, which we thought he was going to do last month, and due to a confusion between the two of us, he was not yet ready. So that's the next two, and following those two, we have indefinite openings. And I would love to have anybody on this call step up and say, hey, I'd be glad to give a presentation. So
I sent you a note.
Yeah, Ed is gonna put me on for a talk on the Fournier forgeries.
I'd love to do that, Louis.
Yeah, you can put me probably July. It will be translated for sure.
Very good. I'll email you and we'll straighten that out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have the next three ready. And you want to volunteer for something, because if not, you're going to end up hearing about French Congo or Algeria. So very good. Well, I thank everybody for attending today. It's been fun, and Ed, you did your usual excellent talk. Very interesting. The subject was interesting, and I look forward to seeing all of you again in a month, or actually, 4 weeks, I think it'll be. All right.
Okay.
Everybody be
Everyone.
safe.